everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever anybody is. Welcome to another episode of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. I am Laina Orlando, and today is August the 28th. I cannot believe this year is moving so quickly, but at the same time, I'm so glad that it is, because knowing what I know now, experiencing what I experience now, I am ready to get on to that time and space where we are experiencing as our lived reality, the new earth, experiencing the happy dream, as A Course in Miracles calls it. So I am super excited about that. And today we're going to just continue with where we left off last time. We are still in chapter 30 of A Course in Miracles in the text. And, you know, this is the kind of teachings that you can't move through them fast. They have their own pace, and the pace is really, for me, is based on, are we understanding what is being shared? Are we living what is being shared? Are we accepting the truth of the Course as it is stated? You know, in the introduction of A Course in Miracles, Jesus tells us that we cannot, and I'm not even going to paraphrase it, I'm going to go and read it to you. But in essence, we need to accept what is written in the Course exactly as it is written. If we don't, then we're attempting to create our own interpretation. And if we're attempting to create our own interpretation, then the ego has gotten involved. And basically what the ego is doing, which is what it does to pretty much all of us, is it creates an interpretation about things, even beautiful spiritual things, but it uses it against us. It uses it to preserve itself. At some point on this journey, after we begin to befriend our ego so that we can understand its secrets, so that we can glean from it the information that is trapped in emotional trauma. When we befriend our ego and are open to listening to it, and it's no longer this scary thing, this darkness we don't want to face, after we befriend our ego, after we go through that process, what happens is we begin to realize it is not our friend. It is actually our enemy. An enemy may sound like a harsh word, but when you expand your awareness, when you're moving to the place that you want to be in flow, you realize the ego is the only thing that stops us from being happy, from being in flow, from being at ease and at peace, from knowing ourselves as a divine source that we are. But you can't get to hear and understand that you don't want the ego running your life until you have befriended it. I say make ego your amigo in the beginning stages. And of course, as people are discovering their ego self, which is it's the part of you that holds information and creates an identity as the victim or the bully. It's always two sides of the same coin. So if we show up as a victim, is because we're operating from what happened to us, and we use that. And this is why victims are the most vicious beings on the world, because when you have been victimized, there are only two things you can do with that as a bully. You become aggressive or you become passive aggressive. There are no other two ways of showing up. And you can see that in your own lives. I know I did. I would be passive aggressive when I would manipulate people into doing things like examples. My father of my children, when we were married, I can't do that. I'm not able to do that. Maybe you should do that. Or I don't know how to write, or I don't know how to do math as good as you. Why don't you go do that with the kids? Why don't you do this? And I would be always manipulating, because there was a part of me that when I was in school and I didn't get good grades in math, or I didn't get good grades in English, I felt, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. It's victim mentality, low self-esteem in that area. So I would say, oh, passive aggressive. Oh, I can't do it. The aggressive side would show up, and if he was supposed to do something, take the trash out or whatever, why didn't you do that? You were supposed to do that. Why didn't you fulfill on this? Or there was a time when he was looking to get a promotion at work and somebody passed him up. Why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you go talk to them? So there was an aggressive side that would be very demeaning, demanding, and you got to do it my way. And then there was the passive aggressive side, which would use, well, I can't do it, but you're better than I am, all to manipulate to get me out of doing something I didn't want to do. And of course, that's just one example, but you can take that from 0 to 100, and you can see how aggressiveness shows up in so many ways, to the point of murdering somebody. That kind of aggression but the one who can go out there and kill somebody is somebody who is operating from a deadening inside of them, a victimization inside of them. It's all projection. So the Course tells us in the introduction, this is at the very beginning of the Course in Miracles. In the introduction, I'm just going to read the whole thing because it's always good to go back to the basics. And this is the basics of A Course in Miracles. And it starts with, this is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. Let me stop right there. Well, let me go to the next one. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. So it tells us right from the get-go, it's required. You have to understand the ego. There is no way anybody is going to ever wake up if they don't understand the ego. And that means if they understand the ego, then they can begin to sense the reality of God, because ego is a block to God. I think it was Wayne Dyer that coined ego stands for, EGO stands for edging God out. And that's when you begin to see the ego, you cannot help in time. It doesn't happen right away, but you cannot help in time to realize that if you don't let the ego speak for you, you're feeling this benevolence, this divinity, this kindness, this generosity, this gentleness is what shows up automatically. So we're looking at the obstacle to the ego, because if you remove the obstacle, what is God? If you remove the ego, God is all that is left. If you remove your fears, love is all that is left. If you remove a block to the sun is all that is left. So it tells us everybody has to go through this. Now, let me be clear. Everybody doesn't have to do A Course in Miracles. The Course in Miracles is not what is the required course. What is required is the teachings within the course. That means that if there are teachers, and there are, that are teaching people about the ego, that are helping their students work through their mind. Buddhism teaches a lot about, well, most of it is mind. But the Buddhism doesn't take you to God. That is something that Buddhism stops short of, but it teaches you the mind. But you can't know God until you know the mind. So Buddhism is on the journey, it is a step on that trajectory to know God. And I would say most people that would study Buddhism as the Buddha taught it, not the indoctrination or the dogma of Buddhism where, one Buddhist can judge another Buddhist. I'm not talking about that, which happens in Christianity, happens in every religion. But the essence of the teachings is to know your mind, understand your mind, and don't let it run your life. When that is fully understood, God is all that is left. So the next step that the Buddha would have to take, or anybody that studies those teachings, is to come to know God. Then it activates the Christ consciousness. So Buddhism, it is like a prerequisite for experiencing what Jeshua was here to teach us, the Christ consciousness, the purity of the awareness that everything is one. Everything is one. Buddhism is studying the mind and moving us to the place of non-duality, which recognizes oneness, which recognizes that everything comes from the mind and there's only oneness there. But it doesn't move us into the place of knowing God and understanding that God is love, and it's all that wants to flow through us. So it tells us that you can take however much time you want to take to understand the course. You do not have to do this right away. You don't have to do it in a year. You don't have to do it in 10 years. You don't have to do it in one lifetime. Then it says that free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. You don't get to decide what is in this material. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. This is something that for all of my years of having Course in Miracles students, I see this over and over and over again. People take something, twist it, and then wonder why their life hasn't gotten better. Well, it's because if it tells you that you and God are one, you and God are one. And when it says you and God are one, everything is one with God. So you can't go about living your life taking these teachings and then decide, there's that person over there who did something I don't like. There's that person. I'm not going to talk to that person because, they cut me off in traffic or they didn't return my phone call. That's not what the course is saying. The course is saying, if you see something out there, you're projecting it from your ego. So the students that take the course literally and then sit within and go, why did I judge that person? And come back and see, okay, that was my ego. What is that trying to teach me? Because we have this guidance system within us. We have this system that is so powerful and beautiful and simple. If you feel anxious, tight, tense, your system is telling you you're listening to the ego. Anytime that there is discomfort, you're listening to the ego. But if you don't know what the ego is saying, if you don't know what the ego is, then you think it's just you getting angry because of what somebody did. And then what happens is you say, that person made me feel bad. Instead of, I felt bad because my ego was saying something that interpreted what that person said. That's the more mature aspect of spirituality, is a total and complete awareness that anything that you're thinking is creating your reality, is creating your experience. So you don't go to the mirror and try and change. Like if you have a frown, you don't go to the mirror and try to make it happy. When you utilize these teachings correctly, you use other people as a mirror, and a mirror that you come back to you. And if you're frowning because of what they did, you come here and you make yourself happy. You don't try to change other people. You change yourself because you realize that felt bad. I was so angry. That made me tight and tense. I felt closed off. My blood pressure went up. You realize what you're doing is you're poisoning your body. If you use that word, you will understand the power of the ego. It either, when it's activated, it's poisoning your body because it's activating the chemicals within your mind, within your brain, not your mind, within your brain, that release chemicals that send you into fight or flight. And if you're operating in fight or flight, you're depleting your life force, you're aging, you're making yourself sick, you're making yourself slow, you're making yourself lethargic, you're bloating yourself, because those chemicals are a signal from the physical body, the brain, letting you know, okay, we're listening to the ego. If you're listening to God, and this is why it's so crucial that we understand what the ego does, because when it's not there, you're listening to God. You can't help but listen to God, period. It's like a hose. If you turn it off, that's the ego. If you turn it on, water is going to come out. You don't have to do anything to force the water. You don't have to go pump something to make it come out of the faucet. It will come out. You just have to remove the obstacle, which is the off button. Ego is an off button to God. God cannot flow. The information is there, but it cannot flow and be experienced. So in the introduction, it tells us that the course does not aim at teaching of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The water that's going to come out of that faucet is there no matter what. The sunlight from the sun is there no matter what. What is the obstacle? That is what we need to understand. That is the work. We don't work on God. We work on removing our misunderstandings about God, which is egoic. We work on removing the obstacles to being kind, to being gentle, to being generous, which are egoic. And those obstacles are the learned beliefs that we experience in our lives. And everybody experiences them to one degree or another. Some people may grow up in a home where the parents are into maybe a very, very optimistic way of looking at things, and they grow up with optimism. But if there is some degree of you've got to do it this way and to be happy, or you've got to be optimistic and you're going to get the job, and when you get the job, you're going to get the money. When you get the money, you're going to be successful, and then you'll be happy. It's still, even if it's optimistic, it's still searching outside of ourselves for what is already within. Most of us have not grown up in conscious households. Many of us have grown up in households that were very dysfunctional. Some of us had the ability to have some level of consciousness, some love of God, pure love of God, not fear of God, because if there's fear of God, it's pure ego. And those of us who have had the opportunity to experience a level of permission to question things. My mom was an atheist and my dad was Catholic. So I grew up hearing very opposing examples of things. And in that very different way of thinking, I was given permission to question things. So it was a gift that I got that I believe, has been instrumental in my journey, because I always grew up hearing two sides. So I knew that there were more than one. I knew that being right, if my dad thought he was right and I went to my mom had a right way that was very different than my dad's. And what she said, it felt right. What he said, it felt right, but it wasn't complete, because it was always opposing the other, not in acceptance of the other, this and that. It was either this or that, but that was enough to give me permission to question things. So as I began on this journey and I began to be guided to look at my ego, to understand the ego, the teachings about the ego came to me before I ever studied A Course in Miracles. When I was downloaded with the Power of Awareness workshop and the Shift and Lift workshop, and the Shift and Lift teachings, which break down the ego, which, by the way, this weekend I'm doing that one day. And I know some of you are going to be on there. I still have a few spots left. If anybody wants to join us Saturday, 10 to 5 Eastern time, it's virtual, so it'll be online, but it's all about what the ego is doing to us. We have to understand it and make it our amigo, because in the beginning, we have to be kind and gentle with the ego to understand it. It's like we're coaxing a wounded child out of the dark spaces where it's hiding. So it is a process of being very, very gentle with ourselves. But when you find that wounded child and you can understand what it's all about, then the work is to begin the process of reminding yourself that there is no wounding in you. That you are a divine being who chose to have an experience. Now, the experiences that happen could have been hurtful, could have been, painful. Yes, the Course doesn't deny that we experience those things. The Course wants us, in fact, to deny that experience altered our soul. The Course attempts to have us see very clearly the soul, the essence, the divine aspect of who you are, that which is eternal, has never, ever, ever, ever been affected by anything we've done. It has just been pushed back and back and back and further back when the ego gets bigger and bigger and bigger and takes on its own identity, and you think you are your ego. You think you are what happened to you. So we've got to befriend that part of us that inflates that sense of separation, that sense of woundedness, that sense of entitlement because of what happened to you. We have to separate that so that the soul can move forward. And the soul, the essence of who we are, all of us are, recognizes that we're all the same. That's where the forgiveness comes from. It recognizes, oh yeah, everybody is born into dysfunction and create stories. Of course, I forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Jesus taught us that on the cross. And as a matter of fact, the Course tells us that was one of the biggest teachings of why Jesus chose to incarnate. Yes, chose to come in at a time when he knew crucifixion would happen. But by the time crucifixion happened, he already knew, he had already done the work of understanding his mind. As a matter of fact, he studied with teachers of the East because they were studying Buddhism, which were helping him understand the mind. His family in Judaism could only teach him so much. Most of it was basically God is up there and you're down here, and these are all the commandments that you have to follow. And Jesus was like, no, this doesn't make sense. He went on to study with those who taught him to understand the mind. Because if the mind is changed to accept only truth, then you are not, soul comes forward, ego basically is practically non-existent, is only there to the extent that it gives you the opportunity to realize that you are having a human experience. And then you somewhat identify as, yes, I'm Jesus, or yes, I'm Laina, or yes, I'm Bobby. And so you recognize that there's you and there are others, and you might even get married and have children. And so you have the experience of otherness, but it is all for joy. It is all for happiness. It is all to experience what only can be experienced when you can hug another. I mean, it's all well and good to know we are one, but nothing is like a hug. Nothing feels like a passionate kiss. Nothing feels like when I was holding my little granddaughter today and I'm watching her smile back at me, and nothing feels as powerful and wonderful and delicious as that interaction, which is the experience that we have incarnated to have. But when you listen to the ego, those experiences that were meant to be fun and easy and joyful and happy and co-creative, and nobody has to hurt anybody, those experiences are not possible when we block them with the ego's ideas of, what am I going to get out of this? And who are you to say that to me? Or who am I to think that I'm not good enough? I'm not lovable enough. All of those beliefs, which come from our childhood experiences, block us from having pure, joyful human interactions that are part of this third dimension. Course in Miracles recognizes just because we understand the ego does not mean that we are going to leave this dimension. So that's why it gives us the happy dream. It says you can still be in this dream of separation, thinking that there are other people, but let it be happy. Let it be joyful. But to have that experience, humanity has to get on board with the idea that we got to get transparent. We got to start telling the truth. We've got to start talking about, why did we do what we did? Because then we see what we were believing. And if we see what we were believing, we can trace it back to where did you learn that? Because none of us, not one of us, is born to hate each other. We are all born to have experiences here, because this is the planet where we experience with the five senses. So the Course tells us, once we remove those obstacles in the introduction, once we don't need to learn what love is, we don't need to learn what God is. Remove the obstacles, take off the valve that shuts off God, that shuts off the water. Remove that, and the water is going to flow. God is going to flow. Love is going to flow. Joy is going to flow. All the things that we want, well-being, all of that will flow, because it's our natural state. We've just been damming it up and pushing it back. Then he goes on to say, the opposite of love is fear. But what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. So when it says the opposite of love is fear, it's just so that we understand. The opposite to open is closed. But if it's open, then there will be no closed, right? The opposite to light is darkness. But if the sun was always, if we didn't have anything that blocked it, like the planet or the moon, there would always be light. So what is love has really no opposite when we don't oppose it, when we don't block it, then fear wouldn't even exist. That's why it says that this course can be summed up very simply in this way: nothing real can be threatened. The essence of the source of God that each and every one is cannot be affected Just because you were traumatized as a child, your soul is not affected. You just have to do the work of excavating and going gently back into the recesses of your mind until you find your true innocent self and bring that forward. When you bring that forward, you bring your light forward. You remove the obstacles, you remove the stories, you remove the beliefs and limitations, and nothing unreal exists. Ego doesn't really exist. Ego is not a thing. You can't do surgery and remove your ego. Ego is a way of thinking, and it is a way of thinking based on fear. As a child, you experience something that a parent does that you know, your soul knows that that's not loving. That's not joyful. And you contract, you pull back and you go, that's not okay. But you don't have the maturity to go, okay, mom, dad, that's not okay. For the most part, most experiences children have, they don't even know how to speak. It's pre-verbal. So they cannot even say what it is. Maybe they might cry, and the cry is a warning to the parents, but if the parents are not listening, it doesn't matter. So you are attempting to recognize that something is happening that's not okay, but in the immaturity of a child, they don't have the awareness yet. In that immaturity, we begin to create a perception. That is the ego. I perceive that what has been done to me is bad. And the only way a child can interpret it is, I'm bad. I perceive that what has been done to me is unloving. I'm not lovable. What dad did or what mom did or grandpa did or the teacher did was so mean, then there must be something bad about me. I must be a mean person. Everything that an immature child from the ages of 10 down perceives, it's always interpreted as it's me. I'm the problem. And then we grow up. We grow up and become adults, and we think that because we got a job and we got money and we have our own place that we're independent. We're not. We are always operating from that wounded self. We are always operating from that immature child. That's why you can look at politics. You can look at business. You can go to a meeting and watch two CEOs say nasty things to each other, and you can sit back and go, "My God, they're acting like 8-year-olds." Well, because they're acting from their wounded self. And in some cases, you see it glaringly. In other cases, you don't, because it's hidden and it only comes out at certain times. Maybe they can be really wonderful people 80% of the time, 90% of the time, but that 10%, that 20% that runs them is always operating in the background, attempting to convince them of the things that they're not okay at, that they're not good enough at, that they need to get more of, that they need to become, because it's an insatiable quest for finding something outside of itself, because it's an innate knowing that there is more. The spiritual journey is about coming inside. Yes, there is more, but it's inside. And it's inside where? Behind the egoic stories that we tell ourselves, there is the light that we're looking for. The truth of who we are is already within us, because that spark of divinity that each and every one of us is God itself, expressing itself in all the infinite ways that it can. So when we look at A Course in Miracles and go back to the introduction, if you don't accept that the Course is telling you, you are God, you are powerful, you are made of love, the only thing that you can do when you have this awareness and you act unloving to somebody else or to yourself is to forgive yourself. This is a course in learning how to forgive yourself for believing things that are not true. That is all that the Course in Miracles is about. We're believing things that are not true. We're believing that we're separate, not true. We forgive ourselves and go, oh, okay, I'll do to others as I want them to do to me, because we're one. We forgive ourselves for believing that our happiness is outside of ourselves, because it's not true. Happiness is within us. We are the ones who can be happy no matter what. But we have to do the work of looking at the obstacles to that happiness Those are the beliefs that I can't be happy because daddy abandoned me. I can't be happy because, grandpa molested me. I can't be happy because my parents died when I was 2 years old in a car crash. I can't be happy because, the government bombed our country and we've been displaced. All of those stories are true in the experience, but they do not alter the truth of who we are. That's why nothing real can be threatened. You are a divine, powerful being. And the time that we really begin to see the ego acting up the most is when you begin to make a decision that you are going to accept the truth of who you are as God created you, as it is stated in the Course in Miracles. If you try to alter what is in the Course in Miracles, your ego will spiritualize you. That's what religion has been. Religion has been a taking beautiful things, and then we become, we know it, we can quote the Bible, but we're walking around believing that we're separate, and we judge, and I'm right and you're wrong. That's spiritualized ego for sure, quoting amazing things. I see that with Course in Miracles all the time. I did it for a while until I continued the process. I've been on this journey with the Course for like 12 years. It's an ongoing practice to make sure that my ego is not interpreting the Course. So then we go to where we are today, chapter 30. And, you've got to understand that the Course in Miracles is a very extensive course, 31 chapters. We're looking at chapter 30, has many sections. We've seen the importance of understanding what the ego is all about, or the idols that we create, which is to put power outside of us. We just finished last week, completed the section number 7, which is a new interpretation. And the only way we can create a new interpretation, as we were taught, was to have one thing that we're all moving towards, one goal. You have to have one goal. And that one goal is to move towards, what does God think? What does God say? Because the ego interprets things. And there was my dad's opinion about religion. There was my mother's opinion about religion from her atheist perspective. And if we got 100 people in the room and everyone would have had their opinion, ego interprets based on their own personal experiences. But God is, and that's it. And what does God know? What is God's knowledge? What is God's understanding? What is God's power? What are the attributes of God? That is what we have to make a commitment to come to know. Because when we listen to the voice of God inside, we all want the exact same thing. And it's summed up in our Constitution, which is so amazing, which is what's so beautiful. Those beings who wrote that were inspired. To me, parts of that Constitution are channeled. Because why? When you remove the obstacles, God comes forward, and it doesn't matter. This is a required course. No matter where, what time, where you are in the world, who you're learning it from, it's a required course. You have to understand the truth of who we are. So when you begin to recognize who we are, we want life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We want to do whatever we want to do when we want to do it. And because we're all created equal, then the rules have to apply equally to everybody to be able to experience those inalienable rights. We cannot experience freedom, pursuit of liberty, if we have a justice system that has double standards, that allows for two ways. Okay, we'll prosecute this group because they're this religion, not that one. That's not equality. We'll prosecute these people because they have this political view versus that one. That's not equality. We bash these people because they see things this way, that's not equality. So equality is everybody has to have the same opportunities. Now, if people are misbehaving and they do not, they attempt to hurt somebody else, then that has to be addressed and dealt with for the benefit of everybody. Not to punish those people, but to pull them to a place where their minds can be rehabilitated, where they can be taught the truth of who they are, and then they can't do that again. But when we just punish them, we then the bully that was punished becomes a victim of the system, then that victim wants to take revenge based on what the system did to them, and they go out and victimize somebody else. And that's why the cycle continues, and it's perpetual. So the Course in Miracles attempts to get us to get really clear. Know who you are. Come to accept your divinity. Come to accept your power to choose, to decide what to believe. And it's very, very difficult to move, and not impossible, but difficult to admit that you are wrong for many, many reasons that we're not going to get into now. But admitting that we're wrong is one of the signs of spiritual maturity. When you start thinking, oh, that person is horrible, you know, what a horrible man, what a horrible woman, and you go, wait a second, that's the mirror reflecting me. What's horrible about me? And you can say, you know what? I'm not going to be right that they're horrible. I am going to use that to come and explore, what do I still consider horrible about me that I'm projecting? That's where spiritual maturity really kicks in. That's when you now know that every irritation is an invitation. That made me angry. That made me upset. You come back and you look at it. You face you. What you're saying becomes something that you feel in your body as a tension, a tightness. It's your guidance system saying, come back in, listen, what's going on? What's happening inside? And that requires an incredible amount of honesty. You've got to get clear. All projection, all judgment is about you, never about the other people. It doesn't mean that they're not doing what they're doing. But if you were already in a state of oneness, if you were already at a high frequency, you would observe it and go, oh, okay, you know, they're just doing what they're doing. It wouldn't affect you. It would just inform you. And once you're informed by what they're doing, then you can make decisions. Okay, well, they're behaving that way. I'm not going to call them. I'm not going to hang out with them. I'm going to choose to do something else. But you know, it's informing you. It's information. Yes, while we're experiencing separation, we're going to see people that behave in certain ways that we don't want to be with, because we will be guided by frequency. You don't want to hang out in those dark places with people who operate in you know, you don't want to hang out in the dark alleys with the murderers and the whatevers, the rapists, because you're not vibing at that frequency unless it's your mission. Like people whose mission at a high frequency is to go into jails and share the truth, share whatever it is. You know, programs like AA are amazing. People who've been there, done that, go down and hang out with people who are just getting started, who may not even be able to be sober completely, but they're attempting. Someone who's at that place of awareness will go sit with somebody who is hurting, because they know they have something to share if they're coming to bring it in with love, because they understand we're all equal. And when you know that you've been there, done that, you know that your ego is what was contributing to that. You know how to help somebody move out of that. That's what Jeshua incarnated to show us. That, you know, we call him Jesus. He came to show us the way out. The way out of the insanity. The way out of the insanity was to get another version of God. So let's start with paragraph, this is section number 8, changeless reality. So we just completed that paragraph that says the new interpretation. The new interpretation is telling us, let's begin to see things in a new way. There is a changeless reality. So paragraph 1. Appearances deceive, but can be changed. Reality is changeless. God is, we're eternal. Gravity is, it's going to happen. Now we can decide to, I can jump from an airplane, or I can jump off of a mountain, or I can jump off of a diving board. You can have different levels of interpretation of how you can work with gravity, and some may not even leave the ground. So we have the ability to see, to have perceptions and see the appearances and perceive them from a different angle. But reality is changeless. And when it tells you reality is changeless and you attempt not to change the curriculum, someone who is really serious about freeing themselves from the ego would spend time contemplating then what is changeless about reality. That is where the time would be spent. Father, God, Mother, Jesus, whatever, whoever you want to talk to. And you're basically talking within yourself. Show me what is changeless. What is changeless is that all of us have life force within us. What is changeless is that there is something animating us that is beyond what we can control. To humble ourselves enough to know that there is a power greater than us. And then the work is to come to understand that. That is why the program that some of you are familiar with speaks to a God of our own understanding, not of our own interpretation, but our understanding is when we begin to come to feel God. And yes, we're going to be interpreting as we move through the steps, as we move through this stairway, the spiral stairway out of insanity, we interpret, but as we come closer and closer to knowing God, it is an understanding that we feel. It's visceral. You feel it within every fiber of your being. And when you feel it within, you know it's true for you. You don't attempt to change somebody else's mind because you understand they don't know what they're doing. They're operating from their level of consciousness. But if you feel it, you're willing to die for it. That's why so many people who feel God within are not afraid of death. That's why they can say, give me liberty or give me death, because freedom comes only from knowing what God is. And knowing what God is knowing what you are, and knowing that you are eternal consciousness means that you're not afraid to die for the truth of who you are. But to get to that point, you have to have the courage. So there's a lot of steps to move us in that direction. So reality is changeless, absolutely changeless. Then what is reality? So it goes on to say, it does not deceive at all. And if you fail to see beyond appearances, you are deceived. If you cannot question your perception. So for example, right now in the political arena, we have so many people for this one or for that one. I'm with him, I'm with her. Is there a willingness to question? I'm with her. Why? Because I don't like him. Why do you not like him? If you don't like him, maybe it is a reflection of something you don't like about yourself. But if you don't have the integrity, the honesty to look at, you're just going to be mad at him. And then you're going to be with her, maybe not even knowing why being with her makes sense, or vice versa. I'm with him and I don't like her because of blah, blah that she did. Okay, can you look at that as a projection? What is it that you've done? This is the same thing. Because until you can see it reflected in you and see in your life, and it will always be there. The example will always be there, and you can only get to it. Sometimes you will through honest inquiry. Sometimes it requires somebody to help us be able to do that. That's what I do in my private coaching, is I help people get to those places where they have to get honest and see that in them. Not to blame themselves, because see, this is what's amazing about this work. You don't see it in you to blame you. You see it in you to free you so that you can go, there is that thing. You know what? I forgive myself for that thing. Now I can forgive her for that thing, or I can forgive him for that thing. What has happened is you remove the obstacle to then hearing objectively. What do you have to say? What do you have to say? Does this make sense? And then from whatever level of consciousness you're at, you can look at things and you can have the ability to discern. Does this make sense? Is what they're saying making sense? Because both sides, they spout nonsense. Both sides spout truth in terms of facts within this third dimension. And what we want to do is make a decision. Who are we supporting based on who is going to do the most to align us with the truth of who we are? Where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness becomes paramount as the work of the government, because they are hired, basically, they are hired by us, elected by us, not selected by somebody, but elected to represent the people and to bring all of us in the direction of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because we're all equal. That's when double standards begin to go away. That's when justice system that does for this and not, those things go away. There's a cleaning up that happens when we, little by little, because it's going to take time, continue to elect the kinds of people that are representing the truth that God desires for us to experience, which is a reality that is not going to change. Whether it's now or in 100 years or in 1,000 years, we're all going to want to experience the life, the liberty, and the happiness, because we're all created equal. We're all created the same. That's what we all ultimately want. It's what we wanted 5,000 years ago. And we still keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. It's what we wanted 50 years ago, but we keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. Now it's time to do something different. Course in Miracles is radically different. And it is moving us into understanding this changeless reality that we got to get comfortable talking about. And for that, it requires curiosity. Curiosity comes from one who doesn't need to be right, who is open to hearing something else. Sentence 4 says, for everything you see will change. And yet you thought it real before, and now you think it real again. Oh, we thought that president was going to do this. We thought that vaccine or whatever was going to do that. And yet we see, oh, it's not doing what it said it was going to do. You thought that the medicine that you took or the vitamins that you took was going to do this, but it didn't do that. Why? Because everything that we see outside of us changes. What we're attempting to do is not be so righteous about this is right, but rather be curious enough to come inside and find the changeless within us that can then observe outside what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And it will only make sense to you to the degree that your consciousness has been elevated. You have to begin to see more clearly. It expansion of awareness, becoming awake, enlightened, whatever you want to call it, is how far back can I go to see the bigger picture? Because the changeless reality is the biggest picture, is what God is. It's all of it. And how far back can you widen back and perceive from there? That is the work that we're doing. And it is an expansion of frequency, of vibration. You feel happier and joyful the more you see, because then you see the bigger picture and go, this makes sense. Mom did this for this reason because her dad did this, and their ancestry did this, and these people come from India and they have that experience 400 years ago that is still within their, okay, that's why everybody does what they're doing, because you see the bigger picture. The ego operates very myopically, only what I see now. I got to take care of me today. It's just right now, I need to get what I want. The total opposite of living in the now, by the way, because I'm seeing only what's in front of me and I want to change it because I want something else that's over there that's better. It's so distorted because everything that we see outside of us changes, but we think it's real. We think it's solid. We thought that president was going to fix things, and that was, 20 presidencies ago. Why are we still having the same problems? Because we're not focusing on the changeless reality. We're moving in that direction, but we're not there yet. Sentence 5 says, reality is thus reduced to form and capable of change. Reality is changeless. It is this that makes it real and keeps it separate from all appearances. It must transcend all form to be itself. It cannot change. This is why people have to go through, people who whether they're on a spiritual journey or not, whether they're on a journey to awaken and liberation or not, whether they know it or not, does not matter. Our lives become unbearable, become unmanageable, as a sign, as an opportunity for us to see what is it that we're attempting to control? What is it that we're attempting to do that we're not giving ourselves credit for being able to do it? But you can't do it by yourself when you are in those lower dimensions. So in the beginning, most people have one or two trusted people, maybe just one, who's been there, done that they respect, that moves them to getting together in looking at things differently. Maybe they share a book, maybe they share a song, maybe they share a movie, maybe they share just time and conversation and share their experiences. This is why groups are so powerful. When you go and you commit to looking at things differently, because you're willing to hear it from people who've done that before. The challenge is that we have segregated doing that kind of inner work almost as a failure. Oh my gosh, I can't succeed in marriage. So I got to go find, marriage therapy, couples therapy, relationship therapy. Oh, I can't succeed in finances. I got to go find, you're embarrassed that you've had a bankruptcy or have so many bills or whatever it might be. And we kind of want to do it in quiet and secret. And because the ego tells you, you're a failure. That's not true. That's a block to accepting that you are powerful, magnificent. And part of this journey is moving us to coming to tap into that part within us that is willing to question everything that we believe and run that through the filter of the awareness of your perfection, of your changeless self. And if you're eternal, then your body cannot be real. You can't have something that is temporary, lives for 70, 80, 90, 100 years and think that that's who you are when what you are is eternal. You cannot alter the curriculum. The curriculum says you are changeless. And if you are eternal and you're not a body, and you use the body for the temporary time that you're here to extend the truth of who you are, to be the kindness, the loving person, the trusting person, your life experience will be so enjoyable. It has to be, because you're operating in a high frequency. People do whatever they do. The kids call you, they don't call you. You have a lover, you don't have a lover. You lose a leg in a car accident, you don't lose a leg. Whatever happens, you're experiencing with the awareness, oh, this is a temporary experience. This is happening to me because this is letting me be Laina, or it's letting me be Billy, or it's letting me be Susie. Then I get to experience it with as much love and tenderness. Can I love me without a leg? Can I just then enjoy finding the people who make the prosthetics? Can I let that become an adventure? Can I let that be a journey? Your soul will take you on a journey to go through all of those experiences with kindness, with gentleness, with excitement even. The ego, oh, no. I lost a leg, so I'm defective. Who's going to want me? Who's going to like me? Who's, what, not having a leg. Now I can't get around. Sure, you can. You just have to learn a new way. Can you get curious about that? So we have an opportunity through the course to basically divide everything into two parts. Let me get that chart. That makes it super clear. I think it's this one. Let me stand up here for a second. So many charts now. They get stacked one behind the other. Where is that one? We are the creators of our reality. Everything is going to have to be. It can only be operating in co-creating a world according to God's rules or according to the egos. But we are all creators of that reality. You get to pick. Are you going to operate in victim bully mentality, or are you going to operate in equality? We're all free. Everybody can do whatever they want to do, including the bullies. If they want to be bullies, it's okay. If they want to be victims, it's okay, because I've been there, done that. And if they're still there, it's because they haven't learned the way out. We're not to judge these people. They don't know what they're doing when they're under the trance of the ego. This is why it's so crucial that those who are co-creating the new earth understand that it is our forgiveness of them, our kindness of them, our compassion of them that is illuminating a light, that is helping more people see that there are people who are unaffected by what's happening in the world because we're becoming changeless. You don't change no matter who's the president. You don't change no matter what pandemic is happening. You don't change based on how much money you make or lost. You become changeless. So you're tapping into your God self. And when we operate from the truth of what we are, we're love. That's it. You're light. That's it. And light means you can see clearly. You have the ability to see everything with clarity. And you understand where everybody is because you've been there, done that. Not because you're superior, but because you have walked the path of descending into the ego's insanity, and you've walked the path of ascending from the ego's insanity. In business, we call that a mentor. And we accept that. People who've been there, done that, and can teach us something. And we are becoming the mentors for those who are interested, or we don't need to be a mentor for anybody. We just become an example. We become the change we want to see in the world. And as we continue to expand our awareness of the truth of who we are, we take the teachings of the course, we apply them. We don't change the curriculum, but get curious. If this says that reality is changeless, then you spend as however much time you need to spend understanding that. When you understand that God is changeless, it's not fickle. It's not a fickle God like we were taught on a cloud somewhere deciding if you're naughty or nice, like Santa Claus. God is changeless, loves every single child. We are all, every one of us is that prodigal child that can come home, and all that we're going to get is a big party, a celebration. Welcome back to the truth of who you are, because the more of us that return to the awareness of what we are, the more the power of the light that we're emitting. Can you imagine a world of 7-8 billion people that we have? If, let's say, 4 billion of us were just happy, gentle, kind people, do you think that we could have wars? Can you even imagine anybody starving? It wouldn't be possible, because we would recognize that you don't want to have more than a brother or sister, not because you feel like, oh, I can enjoy this meal if I know somebody's starving. No, it's because you would enjoy the meal more if you share it. You would recognize, because the day is coming that we are going to be so connected. We're going to have done such the work that is so deep within us that we will be able to feel. It's already happening. We will be able to feel anywhere in the world anybody who is off, because we are one. Telepathically, we're going to be able to feel that. Now, with a lot of what's happening in the world, we're feeling the discomfort, we're feeling the pain, because first we have to feel the blocks to the awareness of love. Before we can get to know and feel love, we have to feel the blocks. We have to see what egos have done. Those who are ruled by their ego operate in darkness. They operate in suffering is part of it. Victims and bullies, it's all about suffering. Suffering that happened to me or suffering that I inflict on another. Sickness, the illnesses that we have are based on the thinking that activates the brain's chemistry. And that's why people are sick. And those who are operating in the ego's world are operating from greed. It's always going to be about greed, and they want more. And then if people are sick and they need medicine, well, we're going to create the things that make us money. And do you think we want to cure them? Of course, we don't want to fully cure them, because then they won't keep buying the stuff that we're selling. There's death, there's judgment, there's lack, there's lies, there's jealousy, there's controlling, always trying to censor the people that are saying something that we don't like. When you operate in integrity, you don't need to censor anybody. You can see who speaks the truth and who doesn't. And you're okay. You just don't participate with those who are lying. You automatically gravitate to those who operate in integrity and in truth. Inside of the ego's world, that's where war can happen, because somebody thinks that they're better than somebody else. So much is changing in this world because we're seeing more clearly the difference between one who is operating primarily from ego. Yes, they have God inside. They do. All of us do. But when we do this work and we reverse everything, because we're removing the obstacles. We're paying attention to what we're saying. We watch our thoughts. We look at the projections and we take them. Every irritation is an invitation to see, what am I projecting on somebody else? And you get super honest. The ego minimizes, and little by little, you become more of the light that you are. And yes, we'll have an ego while we think that we're a separate body, but it will have no power, very little power. And the power that it has is just to allow us to have an opportunity to experience one another. We are on the cusp of more and more of us being so clear about the truth of who we are, committed to the understanding of our equality, and operating from that place. And from that place, realizing that we are eternal. We've been given life that we want to take care of. We want to preserve. We want to enjoy it so we can make the best of it. We were created free. We have free will, liberty. Everybody should have the freedom to do whatever it is that they want to do. When you operate in connection to your loving self, you will never, ever, in your liberty, hurt another person. You can't, because you recognize that you'll be hurting yourself. It would have a ripple effect that would come back to you. And you want everybody to be happy. You would see that so many of the things that we have co-created from listening to the ego are oppressive to so many people. They cannot enjoy their lives because they are so operating in enslavement, first of the mind, and then many of them physically. We don't want that. Anybody who's doing work that they don't like don't understand that they were meant to be free and happy. Anybody who is in a situation that they don't want to be in, be it sex slavery or I mean, when I read and see some of those things, it's amazing. The women and men, boys who get taken and who are sold in sex enslavement against their wills. I have seen, listened to some of these interviews years after these people get out, after they've been in that since they were 3 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old, and then in their 20s or 30s, finally they get out of that. It happens, and it happens only because there's still too much of the ego running the world. And the ego will stop running the world when we remove the ego from ourselves. We have to be the change we want to see in the world. And to get to that, we need to accept the changeless reality that we're tapping into, come to feel it within us, and then we will want that for everybody else. And that is how we create, as within, so without. You become the change you want to see in the world. God then can use you, can inspire you to be part of what shifts the planet so that we can have a happy dream, not just for ourselves, but for our children, our grandchildren, our friends, our family, everybody on this planet. So that is a completion of today's transmission. I feel like, okay, that's all that's coming through me. If anybody has anything you want to share, by all means, unmute yourself. Otherwise, we will be back here. All the future episodes are on YouTube. This is number 162 today for, what is it? 8/28. Oh my gosh, 8/28. All right. See some of you on Saturday for our workshop. That's going to be so much fun. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cherie, for being here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.